In today's video, we'll be setting up Terraform to automate our Cloudflare changes from end to end. We'll import our Cloudflare config into Terraform so we can treat it like code and build a CI and CD pipeline using GitHub Actions to deploy these changes. This is going to be awesome. So you might be asking, what is Terraform and how can it help? Well, Terraform is a popular infrastructure as code tool that helps you manage infrastructure and resources across multiple cloud providers, even your own personal cloud. It does this by using code to automate the process of setting up and managing systems, which is much faster and easier to do than traditional methods like clicking buttons. There are 7 key areas where Terraform shines. Yes, there are 7 of them. Terraform enables automation of infrastructure, provisioning, configuration, and management, which reduces human error and saves you lots of time. It ensures consistency. Terraform ensures that your infrastructure is consistent across all environments, from development to production. It's collaborative. Terraform allows multiple teams to work together on infrastructure changes using version control systems like Git. It's cloud agnostic. Terraform supports various cloud providers, including AWS, Google Cloud, and Microsoft Azure, allowing you to use the same tool to manage resources across different clouds. It offers scalability. Terraform is designed to handle large-scale infrastructure deployments and can easily manage thousands of resources. It helps with reusability too. Terraform modules enable you to reuse code and infrastructure components across multiple projects, making it easier to manage infrastructure at scale. And finally, it's flexible. Terraform is highly flexible and can be extended through plugins to integrate with other tools and services. One of the things that I chose to automate with Terraform is the ever-popular Cloudflare. It's a cloud-based service that helps website owners improve web performance, increase security, scale effectively, and gain insights through many of their services, many of which are free. And while Cloudflare has a great UI, I'm tired of clicking buttons in their UI. While managing one site is kind of okay, managing multiple sites and applying the same settings across the board can be challenging. That's when I decided to finally take the plunge with Terraform and automate my Cloudflare infrastructure and start treating it like code. Now, I know all of this sounds complicated, but it's much easier to set up than you think. And trust me, I knew nothing about Terraform before starting this journey, so this tutorial is definitely for the beginner, but by the time you're done, you'll feel like an expert. So today, we're gonna cover 4 key things with Terraform. We're going to set up and configure Terraform on your local machine. We're then going to install and configure the Cloudflare plugin. We'll import our Cloudflare configuration so we don't have to manually create it. And then we'll apply these changes right from the CLI. We'll configure our Terraform state to use Terraform Cloud so that we can ensure that our state can be accessed from anywhere. We'll then set up a CI and CD pipeline using GitHub Actions so that we can commit our infrastructure as code and deploy our changes in seconds. Really? So you're with me? Let's get started. Worth mentioning, all of the commands we're going to run, as well as some of the templates, can be found in my documentation, and you can find that in the description below. Now, the first thing we need to do is install the Terraform binary so we can run CLI commands. The commands that we're going to run work on Linux, Ubuntu, or even WSL. If you need another platform, I'll have some links for that. So first, we want to make sure that our packages are up to date. Then we need to install some common libraries that it might need. Then we'll want to import HashiCorp's GPG key. Then we'll install it. Then we'll add the repository to our app list. Then we'll install Terraform. Then we can run Terraform -- version to make sure it's installed and see our version. So this is a good sign. Next, what I recommend doing is creating a folder for this Terraform project. So let's make a directory called Terraform project. Then we'll cd into that project. And once we're in here, I'm going to launch VS Code so we can see the files that we're going to create and work on. I typically do this just with code. Next, we'll want to run Terraform init to initialize a new project. So you might see this warning that Terraform can't find any configuration files. That's normal because we haven't created a Terraform file yet. So let's create a Terraform file really quick. And let's name this file cloudflare.tf for Terraform. Now we have a Terraform file and VS Code actually recognizes this, so this is good. So what's going to be in our configuration file? Well, it's going to be our Cloudflare configuration. And it's going to be as simple as this example that you see from this Terraform registry. So let's talk about the registry really quick. So Terraform supports many different providers, and all of those providers give you a way to interact with those providers or services using Terraform and the CLI. And each one of these providers have a configuration specific for that provider, as well as plugins. And you can find them all in the registry here. We look at some of the providers that they have. They have AWS, Azure, Google, pretty big names in here. Kubernetes, Alibaba, Oracle Cloud. So lots of providers here. You can see as we scroll down, there's tons of providers. The nice part is that you don't have to learn how to write code per se against AWS, and then code against Azure, and then code against GCP if you're plumbing out some infrastructure. You can write this code once using Terraform and then use their provider plugins, and it will do all of the magic for you because all of that is abstracted away from you. Getting ahead of myself, let's look for the Cloudflare plugin. So if we go into the Cloudflare plugin or the registry, we can see it here. And if we go into the documentation, this is right back where we were. So we want to create a Cloudflare configuration. Let's just copy and paste this example, and then we'll clean it up for our own use. So let's go back into this file, and we're going to clean it up here a little bit. I'll get rid of these comments because I don't need comments. And then I'm going to pull in an editor config file. This helps my editor, VS Code in this instance, figure out my preferences for my editor. And so then I'll go back to the Cloudflare file, and then it looks a little bit better. And then I can also, I think, clean this up. Format document? Yeah. Anyways, so here's my Cloudflare configuration. You can see in the required providers, it's saying Cloudflare/Cloudflare. That's saying, hey, Terraform, in order to run this, needs this provider. And then we're saying anything within the version 3.0. And then we have some provider stuff down here that we're going to cover. So I plugged in a couple of placeholders here. One for our provider, which is Cloudflare, for our API token that we'll get from Cloudflare, our zone ID, so this is the DNS zone that we're going to be operating on, and then a place for that ID, and then a variable called domain, which I don't think we really need, but we'll keep it there, and then a resource of a Cloudflare record, and then what that record points to. Where am I getting this? Well, if we look at their documentation and we choose Cloudflare record, we can see what this data source is. So this data source is a way to operate or look up a single DNS record, and that's what we're going to be working on. And then in here, it has the schema and everything it supports. Don't worry about this, we're gonna go through all of the properties. But if you wanted to operate on other objects or data sources within Cloudflare, you can see all of the objects here, as well as their schema and their properties and how to use them. So pretty cool, great documentation. So now that we have that record in place, we can really run Terraform init if we want to again. And so now it sees that we have a Terraform configuration. And you can see it also pulled in that provider and generated a lock for us. So this lock file is just a way to pin to this exact version of this provider so that if we run this in CI or in someone else's machine, it works the same way there as it does here. And I don't say works on my machine. So that's what the lock file does. But pretty cool, we're making some progress. So now we need a couple pieces of information. We need to get an API token from Cloudflare, and we need to get a zone ID for the DNS record that we're going to work on. Once you're into Cloudflare, you'll want to select your domain that you're going to work on. In my case, it's this domain, 100daysofhomelab.com. And here's the zone ID that you'll need to take note of. So you'll want to copy this off somewhere safe. In my case, it's Notepad. Next, we'll want to get an access token for our account. So the way you do this is to go into your profile and then go into API tokens. Now we want to create a token specific for this zone. So we want to go in and we want to create a token. Then once you get here, you have some templates to choose from. You'll want to choose Edit Zone DNS. This is going to be the best bet to modify these DNS records. So let's say use template. Now you might need to change some of the values in this template. For instance, if you have multiple zones and you only want this token to be able to modify this one zone, you would only pick that one. So for me, for this token, I'm going to say this token can only modify this domain, 100daysofhomelab.com. So let's continue to summary, and then let's create our token. After this token is created, you'll want to copy it somewhere safe. You won't be able to see it again, but you can regenerate them really easily. But copy this token and put it somewhere safe. Now you can see my token. I'll reset this afterwards, but again, keep this safe because with this token, people can make changes to your account knowingly or unknowingly, but treat this like a password. Don't share it. Next, you want to paste your token into here and then paste your zone ID into here. Don't worry, we're not going to keep it here. We just want it here to make sure everything's working. Then you want to fill in your domain. I guess we do need that key, but you want to fill in the variable for your domain here. And then we'll look at this resource down here. So this is the resource that we're going to be operating on per se, but it's a resource from Cloudflare record. It's the actual www key on Cloudflare. So it maps to that DNS record. And we're saying, hey, for our zone ID, set this zone ID. And then we're saying, hey, the zone ID is this zone ID. Then you want to set your IP address here if you want. This is just a test IP, and you could use this if you want for testing. Then the type of record, I'm just going to create an A record. And then whether or not we want the proxy on. If you're familiar with Cloudflare, this is whether or not you want people to proxy through Cloudflare. Most of the time you do, but it depends on what you're doing. I'm saying true. So let's say we want to actually make this change to our DNS. What we would do is say Terraform plan. And so what plan is going to do is to look at your changes locally and compare it to the state that's in the cloud or somewhere else. And you can see here it's plan, add 1, change 0, 0 to destroy. But is that really true? I mean, don't we have a www record already? Let's check. And if we look at our records, we actually don't have one. So in this case, it would be true and it would create it. But what would happen if we created a new record of 100daysofhomelab.com? Let's try that. So we changed the name to 100daysofhomelab.com with an A record. So let's run Terraform plan again to check. So if we run Terraform plan again, you can see it wants to add another record. So Terraform thinks that there's another record to add. But as we saw on Cloudflare, that record already exists. So Cloudflare doesn't know about our existing state in the cloud, it only knows about our local state. So if we were to apply this, let's go Terraform, apply, and let's say yes, apply these actions. So it's going to go out and it's going to create this and it's going to create a record, and it said it created it. And if we go out to here, here's the record it just created. So Terraform only knows about its local state. And as you can see, we applied that and it created a record for us. So what we want to do is actually import our state from Cloudflare and bring that local so that all new changes that we apply local, we can compare against the cloud state and apply them. Basically, we need to get our state in sync. So we do this with a tool called cf-terraforming from Cloudflare. So what this will do is go out to Cloudflare, grab all of our records and bring it down and convert them to Terraform configurations. It's pretty cool. So let's do that really quick. So in order to do this, we're going to need a variable called Cloudflare API token, and then that needs to have our token set. Now you can set this in your terminal for that session, but I don't like to do it because the next time you run it, you might not have it, and it saves it to your history. So I like to put these things in my ZSHRC or my bashrc, depending on which shell you're using. So I'm gonna copy this, and then for me, I'm gonna run nano ZSHRC or Vim or whatever editor you use. And then on the next line you have available, I'm going to export this and then put in your real token here. So this is the example token. Let me delete this and then paste in our real token. Do I have an extra space there? I don't. Okay. So paste in our real token and then let's save this and then close out. Then you'll need to source your ZSHRC and now we should be good to go. So now that we have that environment variable there, we can actually remove this from our Terraform configuration. So now we can remove this API token from our config, which is a good thing. We don't want secrets in our config. Now you can do the same thing for your zone ID if you like. I don't think the zone ID is a secret, but if you want, you can create an environment variable for it, just like we did for our token. And if you want to do that, then your zone ID should look like this. It should be Cloudflare_zone_ID. So now let's get cf-terraforming installed. First, I'm gonna run this curl command to download the latest from GitHub. Let's do an ls and we see it in there. We can see our cf-terraforming tar.gz. Now let's extract it, do an ls, and we see it's in there along with the binary here. Now let's remove the archive. Now let's move this to user local bin. It's where I usually put binaries that I need, and then look at your directory and make sure it's clean. Now you want to make sure that this isn't in this directory. We're going to commit this later on and push it to a Git repo, and you don't want to push up binaries to your Git repo. You want them on your local dev system. And then one last thing, we need to make this executable so we can execute it. Cool. So now we should be able to run cf terraforming and see an output. So that means everything's working. Cool. So now let's import our state from Cloudflare. And the way that I do it is I run cf-terraforming generate. So I'm going to tell it to generate this resource. And I'm saying the resource type is a Cloudflare record. Then we're saying our zone ID is this zone ID variable, or you could fill it in yourself. So after generating all of those records, we could see them here locally, and they're not part of our main config, but that's okay. They're part of our imported config. I guess we can move these into there, move them into here, and we'll replace this one right here. And so we'll have one file and we can get rid of this imported. So now that we have all of these records here, let's try a Terraform plan again. So if we run a Terraform plan, you could see it's still trying to apply these 3 records. And we don't want to do this because we have those 3 records. So even though we generated a copy of what's in the cloud, we actually didn't generate a state locally that matches what's in the cloud. So let's do that. So to import our Cloudflare state and not just the records, this is what we run. We run an import command. So let's run that really quick. And we can see now we have these import commands to run. You might think that these are logs, but they're actual import commands that we want to copy and paste and run. So we'll copy them all there and we'll run those commands. So now it's actually adding those records to our local state. So hopefully if we run Terraform plan again, we can see that there are no changes. So now our local state and our cloud state are in sync. And you'll notice that you have a terraform.tf state here, which is exactly that state that we just generated. Now that we have our local state in sync with our cloud state, let's actually make a change. So let's say my IP address for this record is 203.0.113.100. So let's change that record here. Then let's run a Terraform apply. And we can see right here that, hey, now we're only going to change one record. And what's the value that's going to change? It's this IP address. So if we like these changes and we want to apply them, now we run a Terraform apply. And if we run an apply, it'll ask for confirmation. We say yes, and it went out and it made that change. And if we go out to Cloudflare and look at this record, we can see that this record changed. Awesome. So now our local state is in sync with our cloud state, which is awesome. But it's only awesome for me. It's only awesome for me as one developer. As you can see, I have my Terraform state file here, but Terraform says not to commit this to a Git repo. You shouldn't share it. It's not a best practice. So you want to make sure that your state stays in sync across teams or across you and machines or across CI. Now you can set this up in S3 or set up a custom backend for it, but Terraform provides a free backend in the cloud for you to store your Terraform state in. So once you get to Terraform Cloud, you want to create a new workspace. And let's call this the same name as our project, which is Terraform Project. Once we create this, we now have a space for our Terraform plan and apply to run, as well as a centrally cloud-based state for Terraform. So in order to move our state to the cloud, all we need to do is copy this cloud block right here, and then we're going to put it, it says within Terraform, so let's go above providers and we'll put it right there. Then we run a Terraform init, and I know we've run init already, but now it's going to recognize those cloud settings. And it's asking us, do we want to migrate our state to the cloud? And I'm going to say yes. So now it's migrating our state to the cloud, and we look pretty good. So let's run a Terraform plan. Let's run our plan. So as you can see, it's preparing to run the remote plan. So it's not running a plan here, it's actually running it in the cloud. And as you can see, we got our first error. So it's saying we need to provide our API key. Now remember, we have that API key locally in our local environment, but we also need to put that API key in their environment. So copy your API key for Cloudflare and let's go into variables. Now let's create a variable so that when these run in the cloud, it can actually use that variable. So you have 2 choices. You have a Terraform variable or you have an environment variable. Now we created an environment variable, so we're going to use that, but you could also create Terraform variables, which are just scoped to Terraform. Now they're a little bit different because they're only scoped to Terraform, so they all start with TF in order for Terraform to recognize them. We're not going to use those. We're going to use a straight up old school environment variable. So our environment variable is Cloudflare API token, and then our value is going to be that token. And you'll want to make sure that you mark this as sensitive. So this will make sure that it's always masked, whether it's in logs or in the UI or anywhere. You want this to be masked. And then you could put it in the description if you want. I'm not going to put it in. So let's add that variable. So now we have it. It's sensitive and it's write only. It means we can't read it out. Let's go back to our failed plan and run plan again. So now here it goes again. It's running a plan in the cloud and it's preparing to start. Running, it's initializing, preparing those modules, and it sees a change again. So now let's run Terraform, apply, and apply this change. And now it's applying those changes in the cloud. So now it's ready for me to accept those changes, and I'm going to say yes. There we go. So it applied it. Let's go look in Terraform. So in Terraform Cloud, we can now see that we have some runs. So these ran. So here's our errored one, here's our plan that finished, and here's our plan that applied. And we can see all of the logs out from there, so pretty cool. So awesome, quick review of what we have so far. So we're able to set up Terraform. We're able to pull our state down from Cloudflare. We're able to apply our state back to Cloudflare. And now we've moved our state, our Terraform state, to the cloud so that we have the same state no matter where we run this. Next up, CI and CD and pushing this to a repo, because this is where it gets really awesome. And this is really now where the value comes in. All of this is nice, don't get me wrong, but being able to commit this code and push it up and maybe open a PR and have another developer review your changes before you commit this infrastructure, and then have that infrastructure go out and apply automatically is pretty awesome. So let's do that really quick. You'll need to go out to GitHub and then follow me there. And then after that, let's create a new GitHub repo. So let's go into repositories. Let's create a new repo, and then let's name this the same thing we've been naming everything. So let's name it Terraform Project. And then make sure you set this to private. We're not going to commit any secrets here, but still you might have IP addresses in there, which really aren't that great to share in a public repo. Anyways, set this to private. Let's create a repository, and then it's going to give us some commands to run from our local directory. So let's do that really quick. So I'm going to bring this side by side so we can convert this project into an actual Git repo. So we've already created one remotely, but now we need to convert this local folder into a Git repository. So I'm going to copy pasta this whole thing, git init, initialize a repo. Then we don't need to add a README. We could, but we're not going to. And if we do a git status, we're going to see some files in there we may not want to commit and some state in there that we don't need anymore. So let's take care of that. So back in VS Code, let's delete our local state and the backup because we don't need that anymore. It's in the cloud. Say yes. And then we don't want to commit this Terraform directory here because this is additional binaries and configuration for Terraform. So we need to add a git ignore file. So new file.git ignore. And this is going to tell Git, hey, ignore anything that matches this pattern. And then in my git ignore, I'm keeping this simple. I'm going to say, hey, ignore anything in the Terraform folder and ignore any terraform.tf state. Now, we just deleted ours, but this makes sure that they never sneak in again, even if we did create it. Now that we're back here, do a git status. Okay, so those files are now gone. We do see a change log in here and a license. I think that's from a binary, so let's remove that really quick. So rm a change log, we're gonna rm this license, and we're gonna rm this readme because it's not mine, it's actually one that came from that archive we extracted. Now let's do a git status, and now we should have it pretty clean. So all we're gonna commit is our editor config, our git ignore, our Terraform lock, and our Cloudflare Terraform configuration. Okay, so now we're gonna say git add. Now we do a git status, so these are all ready to be committed. These are staged. Now that these are all staged, let's commit them. So git commit -m first commit. Okay, we committed those changes. Now it wants us to change to a main branch. I like it. Now we're switched to a main branch. And so now we're adding an origin to the remote. We're saying add this origin of this remote so that we can push this up. So now I'm saying, hey, here's your remote endpoint. There we go. And then we're going to say, hey, push everything up to origin on the branch of main. And we push it up, and now it's pushed up to GitHub. Cool. So now if we go back and we refresh this, we should see our Terraform small little repo. Cool. So let's think through how this is going to work. First, I need to actually add a GitHub action to my GitHub repo. And what that GitHub action does is actually kick off CI or kick off any event based on other events. So for instance, if I were to push some code up to Git, that would trigger an event called push. And then on that event called push, I could trigger an action. Or if I wanted to tag or open a pull request. Basically, there's a lot of Git events hooks we can hook into and then run commands on. So let's actually add our first action, which is all we're going to add. And let's look for Terraform, because Terraform already has an action for us. And if I search, I find it. So let's actually configure this. So we don't have to copy and paste everything. It'll suggest one for us. And so here is the actual YAML file. It is YAML. So we can review this really quick. So this is saying, hey, we're naming a Terraform on pushes to main or on pull requests. We're going to run this command, which is use Ubuntu, check out latest, use bash, use a token, which we don't have yet. And then we're going to run a Terraform init, a format, which is going to lint this, run a plan. And then if it merges into main and it's a push, then we're going to apply. So pretty cool. We got this really, really quickly. I did notice something though. There is a bug in their actual YAML that I found last night, and I should open a pull request on the repo, but we need to take these quotes off of main because there is no branch quote main. It's just a branch of main. So let's change that right here. And let's keep in mind that we need this API token, but let's commit this. So let's commit these changes directly to our repo. And we can add a description if we want, adding TF, GitHub actions. Okay, commit directly to main. Yeah, YOLO, you only live once, let's do it. Okay, so let's go back to our code now. And now you can see we have this folder, this .github. In here, we have a workflow, and now we have our GitHub action. Cool. So this means that when we push code up, it's going to run these actions. And it's actually running these actions right now, but they're gonna fail. So exactly, Terraform init failed. So why did it run that action? Well, when we committed that code, that's a push to master. And so it said, hey, push to master, I need to run this workflow. And then this workflow runs and it tries to run Terraform plan, but it says right here, a token could not be found. So we need to actually set up a token or a secret within GitHub of our Terraform Cloud API token so that when GitHub actions run, it has access to our Terraform state. Let's do that really quick. This is so awesome. Could you tell I'm getting excited now? Okay, so let's go back out to Terraform. Let's go into our user settings, and then let's go into our token. So we need to actually create an API token. So let's create an API token. Let's call this GitHub Actions. Create a token. Then once we get this token, copy it to your clipboard or save it somewhere safe, and let's create that variable now back in GitHub. So now back in GitHub, let's go into settings so we can create this variable that runs during CI. And let's go into secrets and variables, and let's go into actions. So we need to create a secret, not a variable. So the difference between these two, secrets are gonna be masked, they're write only. Variables are gonna be read write, and you'll see them in logs. We don't wanna do that, so make sure you create a secret. So we're creating a secret, and so now we'll need to name our secret, and this is the actual variable, and then we'll provide a value. So we have the value on our clipboard. We can paste that in there, and the name of our secret is TF_API_token. If you forget what that is, you can go back and look in the actions and see what it is. That's what it should be. So let's add this secret now. Okay, so we have that secret, so we can run this action again, but that's no fun. Let's actually open a pull request as if we're another developer on this project, basically other Tim. So, okay, so maybe okay, so this is other Tim, maybe hat forward. All right, we'll do that. So now other Tim, I wanna come in here and I wanna change this Cloudflare IP, and I say, hey, now we're at 200. We're no longer a 100. So I made that change locally. And then I'm gonna GCO-B, that's git checkout and create a branch. I'm gonna name it update IP. Now I'm naming it update IP, and I'm gonna do a git status. Then I do a git diff, and I can see the difference. Looks good to me. And then I'm gonna do a git add, git commit -m fix. I'm gonna say Cloudflare fixed IP. Then I'm gonna do a git push, and I need to set my upstream origin. So I need to create this branch now, remote, push that up. So now I've created my branch as other Tim. Now if I go back to GitHub as other Tim, I'm gonna create a pull request. And now I'm gonna say, hey, I fixed this Cloudflare IP. I fixed the IP, please merge. And I'm gonna create a pull request now. So now when oh wait. Okay, so now I'm other Tim. Hey, I just got a pull request from this guy. Cool. All right, so we have CI running. Look at this. CI is running. We're open a pull request. It's setting up Terraform. It's actually going to cache those dependencies too. Then it's running a Terraform format. Oh, looks like he has some lint on here. We should tell that other guy that, hey, he has some lint that he needs to clean up. So let's write that in the pull request. Looks like you have some lint. Please run Terraform format. So yeah, let's tell him what he needs to do. Might get done quicker. So we'll comment that. Now I'm not gonna merge it. Looks like you need to run Terraform format. Okay, other Tim. Yeah, what the heck is this guy talking about? My build failed. What's going on? Oh, I can't be deployed, okay. It tells me to run Terraform format. Oh, I must have some lint. So if I go back into my terminal and I run Terraform format, it doesn't work. What the heck is that guy talking about? So what's the Terraform command? It's actually Terraform FMT. I guess they were saving some bits. So we run Terraform FMT. Now let's see. Modified, let's do a git diff. Oh, I see, so spacing. So yeah, Terraform didn't like that spacing. Okay, so I had some lint. So let's git add, git commit, fix lint. Cleaned up. Okay, let's push that up. Let's go back to our PR's other Tim. Cleaned up lint. Also, you got the command wrong. I'll tell that guy. Okay, back is first Tim. I don't know what it's called. Hey, oh, let's see. Okay, so looks like he pushed some more changes. Looks like he cleaned up his lint. And oh yeah, I did get the command wrong. I should let him know. Can't give him too much though. Hey, look at that. So his CI passed. Cool. Let's check it out. So if we look at this now, we can see it ran our setup job. It ran linting, so it ran the formatter. Then it ran our plan, which is just comparing what we have locally to what's in the cloud. And it ran the compare, and you can see there is one change, but it didn't run the apply, which is good because you don't want to apply these changes until you approve them or until they get merged into the main branch. Then it ran some cleanup jobs and post checkout. So now I can say, the typical looks good to me, comment, and now let's merge this pull request, confirm, merge, delete that branch, and let's go back to our actions. So now if we look, show you, if we look at our code, we just merged our first pull request, and we can see now our workflow for after a commit to main. So now it's going to go through again. It's going to plan, which the plan should be the same as it was before, but now it's actually going to run that apply and apply that to Cloudflare. So there it goes, it applied. It also updated our state in Terraform Cloud, and the job was successful. And if we go out to Cloudflare, we can see right there, it's up to date. So awesome. So what do I think of Terraform? I think Terraform is pretty awesome. Now, am I super excited about learning another DSL or domain-specific language? Not entirely. Nothing against Terraform, it's just learning another language that's specific to a product or a group of products. Not too excited about, but I think that Terraform and Terraform's language, the TF or HCL, I forget what it's called, yeah, HashiCorp language, I think it's here to stay, and I think it's here to stay for a while. So me investing in learning this language and learning their tools and learning their platforms is, I think, beneficial for me, and it could be beneficial for you. Now, as you can see, I only applied a DNS record. My plans over the next couple of weeks are to pull down all of my Cloudflare settings for every single feature that I have, and then apply consistent settings across all of my zones, rather than poking around in the UI, because every day I find something that I didn't do on one domain that I did on another. So anyways, Terraform, super cool. I learned a lot today about a lot of things, and I hope you learned something too. And remember, if you found anything in this video helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.
Working on some stuff. You see my Twitter feed, I've been learning Terraform, and it's pretty awesome. And I got some cool stuff I'd love to show you with it because it's pretty awesome. I'm over clicking buttons for most things, and this is my first step to, well, I already have infrastructure as code, but getting like infrastructure stood up outside of Kubernetes with code. So it's pretty fun. I almost linked it a few times.